All right, so we're just welcoming people back to this. Hopefully the weather where you are is nice. Here it's sunny in the Northeast and it's finally warming up. Yesterday was pretty cold. Hopefully where you are, the weather's good and you're having a good nice weather forecast for the weekend. Where do people hope on traveling to when they can safely travel? I'm going to put in the chat box where you hope to visit next. I would love to go to Thailand, but I don't know when that's going to happen. Norway, tropical beach, South Africa. Oh, South Africa is beautiful. I've been there. It's amazing. U.S. Virgin Islands in a few weeks. Oh, very nice. Paris, also Norway, Disney World. Okay, that's a long list. Great. Toronto, wonderful. Yeah, we
I
can.
want to come visit everybody in New York. It's been forever.
Here very soon. All right. So, okay, so I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Radix. The next session titled Sexual and Gender Minority Health Research at the National Institutes of Health.
Well, hello, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. So I'm delighted to introduce Christopher Barnhart. He gave an excellent presentation last year, so I'm very excited about the update. So Christopher Barnhart is currently a health science policy analyst in the Sexual and Gender Minority Research Office at the National Institutes of Health, where he works to support and promote research and activities for advancing the health of sexual and gender minority populations across the agency's institutes, centers, and offices. Prior to coming to the SGMRO, Christopher was an AAAS Science and Technology Policy Fellow on detail to the Eunice Kennedy Shriver National Institute of Child Health and Human Development. He received his doctorate in pharmacology and toxicology from UC Davis in 2015, and then completed a postdoctoral fellowship at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine, focusing at both institutions on how environmental toxicants and individual genetic factors may interact to affect the developing nervous system. Thank you, Christopher, and we're looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Asa. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. There's been a lot of glitches. I just had a new software patch, so hopefully everything runs smoothly. Hi, everybody. Again, it's my pleasure to be back for the second year to talk to you about what's going on at the NIH in terms of sexual and gender minority health and research. My pronouns are he, him, his, and let's go to it. So first, let's see. There we go. I have no relevant financial relationships, and I will not be discussing off-label use or investigational use in my presentation. I'd of course like to acknowledge my colleagues in the Sexual and Gender Minority Research Office, or SGMRO, without whom none of this work would be possible. We added 2 new folks to our roster, so we're very happy to have expanded as an office since the last time I saw you. So this is just a little bit of detail on what I'll be talking to you about today. I'll go into a little bit of how our office was developed. I'll give you a sneak preview of the 2019 NIH portfolio in SGM research. I'll talk about our former and new research strategic plans at the agency and go a little bit more specifically into data collection. I'll mention some events that we've held in the last year to connect members of the LGBTQI+ community to one another, both within and outside of our institution. And I'll close by talking about COVID-19 because it's the elephant in the room. So I'll talk about its impact on SGM communities and also the NIH response to the pandemic. Finally, I'll share with you some of our plans moving forward. And then I want to wrap up by maybe asking you all some questions. I want to get a sense of how you're feeling, how you're dealing, how you're struggling, and what we can do at our agency and beyond to support you in these challenging times. So first, I'll go into a little bit about how our office was developed. kind of the Kickstarter of this was this report, The Health of Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual, and Transgender People, Building a Foundation for Better Understanding. This was written by the Institute of Medicine, which is now the National Academy of Medicine. It was published in 2011 and commissioned by NIH in 2009 with broad agency-wide support. It included the first ever comprehensive report on LGBT health of its kind, and it included an extensive literature review of the existing research up to the point of publication. This report identified that SGM populations have unique health considerations and issues that require specialized attention and research to fully address. This report was also key to the foundation of NIH's SGM Research Coordinating Committee, which would go on to develop the first ever NIH-wide SGM research strategic plan and recommend the formation of our office, which was established in 2015. So this is a list of the things that we do to execute our mission. Our office, generally speaking, coordinates sexual and gender minority, or SGM, related research and activities by working directly with the NIH's constituent institutes, centers, and offices. We focus on supporting, promoting, and advancing the health and well-being of SGM communities through the activities that you see here and many more. We also accomplish our goals not entirely, but primarily through collaboration. We have a research coordinating committee with representatives from across the NIH Institute centers and offices, and this helps us keep a pulse on what exactly is happening relevant to the SGM community throughout our agency. We have a research working group with representatives from extramural institutions, and this provides us with a more extramural perspective on salient issues and activities. We also collaborate across multiple agencies, both within our department and across the government. For example, the Department of Health and Human Services LGBT Coordinating Committee facilitates collaboration and communication related to SGM health and research across our department. We also are part of the Measuring Sexual Orientation and Gender Identity, or SOGI, research group. And this group explores best practices of the measurement of SOGI in federal information collection efforts. I myself sit on the youth subgroup, and our director is the co-chair of the working group itself. In 2019, hopefully you all have seen this, SGMRO spearheaded the revision of the official NIH definition of SGM for NIH research to better clarify the populations that fall under the SGM umbrella, and to really open up more opportunities for researchers to pursue questions involving SGM health. The traditional components of LGBTQ have been maintained, but we wanted to update and expand this definition to more clearly capture the largest extent of the SGM community possible. So now I'm going to show you where our research is as of 2019. This is intended to show you a little bit about where the gaps and opportunities are, where we have solid investments, and perhaps give you some ideas for work that you may want to pursue on your own. If you're interested in pursuing a project and you have questions, you can always contact me, or you can contact program officers at the institutes or centers to which you apply. But again, this is just to show you some gaps and just provide general information for your consideration. So this is a graph we're particularly happy about. Over the last 5 years, some institutes, centers, and offices, or ICOs, have increased their investment in SGM research. Some have fewer SGM relevant projects in their current portfolio than in previous years, and some ICOs' SGM projects have remained relatively stable. It's important to remember here that we can't fund applications that we don't get. So if you see few funded projects at an ICO, that does not necessarily mean that there's a lack of interest. Generally speaking, the majority of ICOs have either maintained or increased their investment in SGM health research since 2015. This shows you the spread of institute centers and offices that hold at least one SGM-related project in their portfolio. There was a total of 408 active projects as of 2019. And you can see here that 18 institute centers and offices at the NIH currently have at least one relevant project. That's out of 27, so that's a very good percentage. The most projects belong to the portfolios of mental health, drug abuse, child health and human development, and allergy and infectious disease. This shows you the spread as it relates to non-HIV AIDS related projects in SGM health research. Although NIH recognizes that HIV remains pervasive among SGMs and disproportionately affects certain SGM subpopulations, such as men of color who have sex with men and transgender individuals, we've been actively trying to expand the collection of projects in non-HIV fields. The proportion of non-HIV focused SGM research has solidly increased since 2015, and 16 ICOs have at least one non-HIV related SGM project as of 2019. There are currently 100, well, as of 2018, there were 147 total non-HIV focused or related projects, and the most were held by child health and human development, minority health and health disparities, drug abuse, and alcoholism and alcohol abuse. This drills down into that a little bit further, and it describes projects by disease area, health condition, or research field. As you can see, projects in HIV are still well represented in the NIH SGM research portfolio, with 64% of projects being at least relevant to HIV/AIDS. However, there are also numerous SGM relevant projects investigating topics such as mental health, substance use, chronic diseases, and reproduction. You can see here on the right-hand side of the graph that there are a variety of topics that are still underrepresented, including teenage pregnancy, opioids, tobacco, obesity, and eating disorders. And although we know that these are important areas with important disparities, we still need more research in these areas. This is a breakdown of the portfolio by grant type. Research projects, the R types like R01, R03, those account for the majority of SGM-related grants. Cooperative agreements, which are research projects that require substantial involvement from NIH personnel, and research career development programs, which are intended to help scientists or clinicians pursue careers in independent research, are also common grant types in the SGM portfolio. NIH recognizes that it's important to diversify the types of mechanisms used to support researchers as much as possible because everybody's situation is different. So it would be great to expand the representation of the different types of funding mechanisms, but we also acknowledge that ICs don't always use the mechanisms that are listed here. So it's important to check in with the ICs you're applying to make sure that your grant mechanism is present if you plan to apply under a certain type of mechanism. So just a few wrap-up takeaways. There's been a 35.6% increase in the number of SGM-related projects between 2015 and 2019. The total number of non-HIV/AIDS related projects reached its highest level ever in 2019, and there's been an 83.8% increase in the number of these types of projects since 2015. 18 ICOs currently have some SGM health related work in their portfolios, and there's been a 46.9% increase in the total number of training and career related awards since 2015, indicating that we are making some headway in building up the research workforce that are pursuing SGM research questions. So next, I'll talk about the strategic plan, which is kind of the business end of how we're planning to get things done. So we had a plan that was focused on fiscal years 2016 to 2020. That is currently done, but we made a variety of strides in advancing SGM health research during that time. As I showed you, there was an increase in NIH-funded SGM projects. We held 2 scientific workshops on methods of measurement and bisexual health. We held a number of regional workshops, and the goals of these are to increase knowledge about NIH structure and grant processes, to improve grant personship, to develop mentoring relationships, and just overall to enhance capacity in SGM health research. And we were happy to say that we had a number of new investigators, early stage investigators, and people that haven't even applied yet. So those are getting to some of the younger components or less experienced components of the SGM research workforce. We also held a webinar that was similar to a regional workshop, but it focused exclusively on research in intersex populations and on differences in sex development. That was a fantastic webinar, and we have that on our website if you would like to check it out after the session. We held 2 listening sessions, and these brought together representatives from research, health, and health advocacy organizations so that they could share their comments, concerns, and suggestions about the work that we're doing related to SGM at the NIH. And input from these sessions ultimately helped to inform development of our new strategic plan. The administrative supplement program was in its 5th year as of 2020. To date, this program has provided support to 64 unique supplements totaling nearly $6.1 million. And we're currently working on the funding plan for the 2021 round of supplements. SGMs were designated as a health disparity population in 2016 by NIMHD. And this has really thrown open the door for people who are interested in SGM research to apply to all funding opportunities that are explicitly relevant for disparity populations. So there's been a lot more engagement of the SGM community after that designation. There's been an increased incorporation of SOGI questions, and I'll get to that in a little bit. And finally, the SGM Investigator Awards Program celebrated its 3rd year in 2020. And these awards honor investigators who've made substantial and outstanding research contributions in areas related to SGM health. And beginning in 2019, SGMRO began recognizing both distinguished investigators who have more experience, have laid more groundwork, have more manuscripts and all that, and also early stage investigators who are up and comers in the field. So in September 2020, we announced the release of our new NIH SGM Research Strategic Plan for fiscal years 2021 through 2025. This applies to the entire agency, not just our office, but it does serve as a blueprint for SGMRO priorities, activities, and collaborations. And I can provide a link to that when we're able to pass out the slides. So in the new strategic plan, we identified a number of key overarching considerations. When tackling SGM health disparities, it's imperative to take into consideration intersectionality, which recognizes interlocking and interdependent systems of oppression or support across different social categories and circumstances, and how they may result in unique health inequities. For example, how SGM status interacts with racial or ethnic status, or living in a rural or urban setting, how these can come together to exacerbate or help mitigate problems experienced by members of the SGM community. We also recognize the importance of different life situations as relates to people's health, including experiencing homelessness, going through the foster care system, or being involved with the criminal justice system. We recognize the importance of aging, conducting research across the lifespan, both in the very young and very old populations, as they all have unique health considerations. We recognize that there are still SGM subpopulations that are underrepresented or not represented at all in our portfolio, including Two-Spirit folks and intersex folks. And we also highlighted a number of relevant research strategies that may be particularly useful for people conducting SGM health research, including community-based participatory research and also trauma-informed research. We identified a whole bunch of scientific themes and opportunities in 4 overarching research fields, and those were clinical, social and behavioral, research in chronic diseases and comorbidities, and methods and measurement. We also put together 4 operational goals that are basically how we plan to execute the mission. And these may look familiar if you saw our last strategic plan. Our operational goals are to advance rigorous research on the health of SGM populations, both intramurally and extramurally, to expand SGM health by fostering partnerships and collaborations, to foster a highly skilled and diverse workforce in SGM health research, and to encourage data collection related to SGM populations in research and the biomedical workforce. And I just wanted to expand a bit on that last one because it is so critical and it's been consistently identified as a very serious gap in terms of SGM health research. Measurement and collection of data on SOGI and sex assigned at birth were identified as both scientific and operational goals in the new SGM research strategic plan. So I wanted to share with you a little bit about what we need and what we're doing. So this report was a blockbuster. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. Understanding the well-being of LGBTQI+ populations was a consensus study report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine. It was released in October 2020, and it was co-funded by the SGMRO with broad support across the government. The report reviews available data and evidence and identifies future research needs related to the well-being of sexual and gender diverse populations throughout the life course and across 8 different domains. And to clarify, sexual and gender diverse is analogous to SGM. There was a linguistic choice that you can read more about in the report itself. It offers 5 recommendations that aim to help address deficits in SGD population research in order to better illuminate current disparities and advance equity both within and across SGD population groups. So this was basically the follow-up to the Keystone 2011 IOM report, and I strongly encourage you to check it out. It's a wonderful read. We know that there are still a number of outstanding issues with SGM data collection. Although there's been significant growth in the field of SGM health research in recent years, there's still a critical need for more SGM-focused work to generate data on SGM-specific health outcomes, health disparities, and strategies to advance health equity. And this becomes even more evident when considering the underrepresentation of various SGM subgroups. In addition, projects that are highly relevant to SGM health or may include LGBTQI+ participants don't always include questions about SOGI or sex assigned at birth, and this represents an important missed opportunity. There's a need for standardized measures in order to adequately harmonize and pool data across studies and to develop clear guidance for researchers, particularly those who do not conduct SGM-specific research, nor have a strong background in SGM health needs and concerns, among others. There's a pressing need to develop novel measures and or improve existing ones specifically intended for measuring SGM status or relevant constructs, such as the process of coming out or experiences of stigma and trauma. To address this need, NIH released the first ever focused funding opportunity in this space in December 2019. It was entitled Methods of Measurement in Research with SGM Populations, and ultimately 7 awards were made, and we're very much looking forward to seeing the results of those studies. SGM data collection is still ongoing at the NIH. As we spoke about before, sexual orientation and gender identity were included in the 2020 NIH Workplace Climate and Harassment Survey, and the results showed that there were striking and significant disparities in experiences of harassment in those who identified as a sexual and gender minority. I have the percentages, and I can also share the report with you, but you're looking at 45% of those who identify as transgender, genderqueer, gender nonconforming or questioning. Bisexual people had the highest rate of harassment. I think it was like 41%. Yeah, 41%. Striking numbers. And in response to this, the NIH formed the OD Anti-Harassment Champions Working Group. And this group leads implementation of the OD Anti-Harassment Outreach Plan, and our director is currently co-chairing this group. There are a number of other efforts that you can read about on our website relevant to this, and that are also available on the site for the survey itself. The All of Us research program asks questions about sex assigned at birth, gender identity, and sexual orientation in its basic survey, which focuses on demographics and can be taken by all program participants. The All of Us dataset already has a substantial population of folks that are part of the LGBTQI+ community. And in addition, they just launched the beta version of their workbench. So researchers who are interested in doing secondary analyses on these data can have access if they get in touch with All of Us program representatives. The Phoenix Toolkit, which I am falling in love with more and more, provides consensus recommended standardized data collection protocols for conducting biomedical research. And the toolkit includes protocols for ascertaining SOGI and sex assigned at birth that you may find useful if you are asking these types of questions in your work. And also, we've been collecting gender identity data at the Clinical Center since 2018, so that's old news, but still very happy that it's ongoing. And another one I want to put on blast, surprise, the National Academies of Sciences and Engineering and Medicine have been commissioned to write another report for us. They're currently undergoing a consensus study panel to determine recommended measures for non-binary sex and SOGI. Recommendations for these measures will be made across 3 domains: research, including large federal surveys, administrative data like grant and job applications, and clinical settings like clinical trials, physicians' offices, community health centers, and the like. The report will also include guiding principles for data collection on non-binary sex and SOGI for circumstances when specific recommendations on measures are not the most appropriate option. We were very excited to get this out the door. This had very broad support from our agency and I believe several other components of the government. I think that the potential publication date is the end of this year or maybe early next year, but we'll make sure that you all have that information, or if you want to get direct notifications, you can sign up for our listserv on our homepage, which I'll share with you a little bit later. Next, I wanted to talk about some of the non-science focused events that we've been holding to bring members of the LGBTQI+ community at our agency together. First, this one I'm especially proud of is the Salutaris reinvigoration. So Salutaris, for those who don't know, is the NIH's employee resource group for LGBTQI+ individuals. These groups serve as a resource and a gathering space for members by fostering inclusivity and affirmation for diverse communities, in this case, specifically for SGMs. This group had kind of languished in recent years, but in 2019, we were approached about bringing it back, revamping it. And I'm proud to announce that we've had 2 social meetings, a number of general meetings. We have our bylaws passed, and our membership is steadily growing. If you are an NIH employee, you are eligible to be a part of this group. So please go ahead and follow up if you're interested in joining. We also held an LGBTQI+ mixer in 2021 that was put on by our Office of Intramural Training and Education. It brought together NIH professionals and NIH supported members of the intramural and extramural research communities to interact in a less formal setting, just to talk about what's going on, issues that they faced, hear about people's experiences. And it was a great event. If you get the chance, I encourage you to attend the next one. And finally, you may have heard, the NIH SGM Health Scientific Interest Group, or SIG, began holding meetings in January 2021. The SIG provides a space to discuss topics and research questions related to SGM health, to explore the intersections of individual, interpersonal, social, and structural factors impacting SGM health, and to provide a platform to allow members to learn and educate one another about SGM health research. The group is open to intramural and extramural folks alike, and I don't think you have to be part of NIH at all to join this one. So if you want to join, you can visit that link that is provided there. And if you're interested in participating in events like these in the future, please sign up for the SGMRO listserv at the link provided. It's at the bottom of our homepage. So I wanted to just close by focusing on COVID-19, but continuing with the focus on members of the SGM community, I'd like to talk about the information that we have on the impact of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19, specifically on LGBTQI+ individuals. Research is still ongoing, so the knowledge base is ever expanding, but this is what we've seen so far. SGM people may suffer more COVID-related symptoms. This may include physical symptoms like nausea, muscle soreness, and the other symptoms that CDC have identified as being COVID-19 associated, and psychological symptoms like anxiety, depressive symptoms, and increased rumination and brooding. SGMs may have a higher risk of COVID-related complications because they tend to have higher rates of underlying chronic conditions such as asthma, cardiovascular disease, obesity, cancer, and HIV/AIDS. And they also have higher rates of engaging in risk behaviors like smoking, vaping, and substance use. SGMs may face disproportionate social impacts like social isolation, lower perceived social support, and loss of places for social gathering. They may be more likely to face employment-related concerns. For example, they may be more likely to work in industries adversely affected by the pandemic, so there's an economic component. And they typically work more often in industries with more frequent SARS-CoV-2 exposure, the health component. Speaking of issues centering on employment, this may also create barriers to accessing critical health care, including mental health services, hormone therapy, and COVID-19 related care. This may also be a problem because of higher rates of unemployment and poverty, and lower likelihood to have medical coverage faced by the SGM community at large. Of course, we recognize that there are intersecting individual and social factors that can magnify health concerns related to the pandemic. For example, LGBTQI+ youth are more likely to experience homelessness. Older LGBTQI+ people may face exacerbated social isolation. Trans people are generally less likely to have medical coverage, and LGBTQI+ people of color face unique challenges. For example, an existing increase in morbidity and mortality, higher rates of underlying medical conditions, and disparities in occupational and housing conditions and socioeconomic status, among other social determinants of health that can make people of color more vulnerable. Just a couple of key takeaways from this part. We must ensure that SGM populations are included in COVID-related research and research initiatives so that the information that gets out there is relevant to our populations. Collection, analysis, and disaggregation of SOGI and sex data in research and clinical settings are critical to better preparing researchers and people on the front line in the fight against COVID-19 and tackling existing disparities. So what exactly has NIH been doing about COVID-19? Quite a bit. One of the things NIH does best is provide support to work to understand things like COVID-19. And we've released a variety of relevant funding opportunity announcements, the biggest of which is the Rapid Acceleration of Diagnostics for Underserved Populations, or RADx UP initiative. This initiative has $500 million in dedicated funding, and its overarching goal is to understand the factors associated with disparities in COVID-19 morbidity and mortality, and to lay the foundation to reduce disparities for those underserved and vulnerable populations who are disproportionately affected by, have the highest infection rates of, and or are most at risk for complications or poor outcomes from the COVID-19 pandemic. There have been a variety of sub-funding announcements released in this space, and two, for example, focused on community engaged research on testing, and this applied to both individual grants like R01s and also larger existing networks with more established infrastructures like the U-type grants. There was also calls for social, ethical, and behavioral implications of testing, research on those implications, because that is so critical to appropriately and competently engaging members of the SGM community. In addition, we've had several standalone FOAs, including one soliciting applications for interventions to address COVID-19 consequences on disparity populations, including community interventions and digital healthcare solutions, and also on the coronavirus and the behavioral and social sciences. We also have a number of other related activities that were rolled out in the last year. The Community Engagement Alliance, or SEAL, has the mission to provide trustworthy information through active community engagement and outreach to the people hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, with the goal of building long-lasting partnerships and improving diversity and inclusion in the research response to COVID-19. In June 2020, the NIH Special Populations Research Forum released a list of recommendations for addressing COVID-19 and health disparities populations, including SGMs. The list centered on educating researchers and high-risk populations alike about COVID-19 related disparities and opportunities, encouraging research projects to tackle disparities, and dedicating funding to ensure that these projects are supported. NIH also fielded 2 separate surveys in 2020 regarding the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the overall NIH and extramural workforces, with a special emphasis on vulnerable populations, the so-called COVID-19 surveys, COSWOD COVID-19 surveys. The results of these surveys will inform NIH leadership about strategies to address COVID-19 related inequities within the biomedical research workforce moving forward. So what has all this done to grant submission and grant writing? Well, actually, we received more applications between May 1st and June 5th, 2020 than in the same period for the 3 years prior. We also released a couple of notices. For example, one of them announced to applicants and recipients of federal financial assistance who were affected by COVID-19 that there are flexibilities available. We also issued a reminder for early career scientists whose career trajectories have been significantly impacted by COVID-19 that there is greater flexibility in requesting extensions for applications. All of these are summarized on the applicant/recipient COVID-19 update history. which generally provides to the research community a summary of updates to NIH's grants administration guidance and policies regarding COVID-19. And it's a great one-stop shop to find out information relevant to grant applicants during this time. Also, the Office of Extramural Research authored an article in November 2020 that discusses the continued impact of COVID-19 on biomedical research. And that's an interesting read if you get a chance. And given this, cute. Given the stark disparities in health, healthcare, and associated research experienced by members of racial and ethnic minority groups that have been laid bare by the pandemic, NIH has redoubled its commitment to tackling these inequities. ACRE, or the 8 Changes for Racial Equity, were proposed and penned by members of the NIH community to ensure the NIH workplace culture is one free of racism, discrimination, and harassment. And this has been wholeheartedly supported by our leadership, and I recommend that you check out this website. Also, the Unite initiative was announced February 26th, and it was established to identify and address structural racism within the NIH-supported community and also the greater scientific community beyond. It has 5 components: understanding stakeholder experiences, conducting new research to support health equity, improving NIH culture and structure, enhancing transparency and accountability, and cultivating a more inclusive and diverse extramural research ecosystem. And you can see here that they've already released several notices and funding opportunity announcements related to structural racism specifically. So what are we doing next? I just wanted to give you a quick snapshot of what some of our plans are moving forward. The SGMRO Scientific Webinar Series is a series that highlights individuals who are actively working to enhance our knowledge and understanding of contemporary issues for SGMs and to provide background on their own personal trajectory to a research career in SGM health. We've had 4 of these so far, and we're looking forward to having more in the coming months. As I said, the SGM Health SIG is up and rolling. So if you would like to be a part of that, just visit our website and sign up for the listserv. We're planning to hold a scientific workshop on violence against SGM populations, which I'm very, very excited about because violence has been such a prevalent issue that's been consistently identified, but not really systematically tackled. In the upcoming months, we'll be releasing the new 2019 portfolio analysis and also the 2020 annual report, which will give you a qualitative and quantitative sense of what exactly is going on here at our agency to advance SGM health. And finally, the 4th SGM Health Investigator Award will be held in September 2021. So we invite you to tune into that on the day. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to answer any questions. Maybe we could do like 5 or 10 minutes about presentation related questions and then maybe move on to a broader discussion, if that's okay.
That sounds great. I'm actually going to step in because unfortunately Dr. Radix is in the middle of a fire drill at Callan Lord Community Health. So which happens suddenly sometimes, and we want to keep everyone safe.
Sure.
So if folks, if they want to put some questions with regards to the presentation, I actually want to kick off with a question, and that you've provided so much good information. I tried to keep up with you as much as possible, Christopher, by pasting in a whole bunch of the links to the various reports and initiatives that are occurring in the chat, so folks can take a look at those amazing things. It's always very replete. The one thing that I wanted to ask you about was you alluded to the listening sessions, the community listening sessions that occurred from various communities. And I wondered, in terms of from an SGMRO perspective, you brought many, many diverse communities together, from Black, Indigenous people of color to the intersex communities. What was your big takeaway in terms of the gaps in research? What are the real opportunities that the community is talking about?
Well, there were so very many. I mean, what's great about the listening sessions is that it brings together people from all over the LGBTQ plus spectrum. And what you realize is that each organization has their own issues, but those also fit within the broader issues of the communities themselves. So it's not oversimplifying to say that these are the only representatives, but they do highlight organization specific areas typically. We have the transcript available for y'all to take a look at for like the takeaways and the recommendations. It's been a little while since I've seen it, I'll confess. It was a while and there was a lot of information there. But we do have the transcripts for you to take a look at if you'd like to do that.
That's good to know. There's a question from Shine Chang that I'm going to read because we need more research. Can you talk more beyond standalone workshop and about how we can support the preparation and nurturing of early career researchers? I worry that many are alone out there trying to thrive. Is dedicated funding possible?
That's a tough one, but we absolutely recognize the importance of early stage and new investigators. That's why we hold the regional workshops, so that people get a flavor of what we're doing, what kind of some of the tips and tricks are, who to get in touch with at the agency if you're interested in things like that. Those workshops are really a fantastic resource for up and coming investigators or people who are just interested in SGM research in general. And I think we may have some of them online. So if you want to check those out, they're a great resource. There's a ton of good information if you want to learn more about SGM interest at any particular institute or center. You can always get in touch with me. I kind of tend to liaise people with those that have more information at the individual institutes and centers. Again, we don't have grant making authority. We don't hold our own portfolio. All we can do is support grants that are already administered by one of the other institutes and centers. So I'll typically send people to those institutes and centers so that they can provide more tailored information about the mission and priorities and how people can align their applications with the interests and mission of the institutes and centers. But you're absolutely right. We do need more to support people in the space of new investigators and early stage investigators. And if y'all have thoughts on that and would like to share, I'd be more than happy to hear them.
I'm an early stage investigator and I've attended the sessions. I think one that was in Philadelphia a while ago with Karen Parker. And I can tell everyone who is an early stage investigator, definitely attend that. And if there's some online proceedings that you can like view afterwards, it's really, really useful in terms of understanding how to engage with the NIH. Are there other questions that folks want to ask with regards to Christopher's presentation before we start having more of a general discussion? Thank you, Christopher, for posting that in terms of the regional workshops. You covered so many amazing things that have been happening at the SGMRO. And I think that's one thing that I think people understand now, but it's an important point to reiterate, that the SGMRO, the strategy, as I understand it, was not to have grant making authority in one office, but basically to cover all the institutes. Can you speak to maybe the highlights of who was being funded? When you look at sort of like the portfolio of all the different institutes where you see sort of underfunding, if you will, like, or under opportunities just that weren't taken. I remember Karen Parker mentioned maybe over a year ago in terms of the National Cancer Institute, there was sort of like not money left on the table. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but there's these kind of institutes that have a smaller portfolio in terms of money, and they're not seeing as many SGM proposals coming across versus the ones with a smaller amount of money and have a huge amount of SGM proposals coming across. Where's the sort of like opportunity that you see in the portfolios?
That's always a touchy question because, as I said, each institute and center has their own priorities and mission. And, as they update their own strategic plans, SGM may be included in that and it may not. So some institutes and centers just don't have dedicated funding. So they rely on things like the administrative supplements where people can help co-fund to get more SGM work in their portfolio. There are some institutes and centers that have never had an SGM project as long as we've been collecting data on that. For example, the Center for Complementary and Integrative Health. I think they would be a fantastic center to tap because they have a lot of interesting research that's quite relevant to SGM health. Dental and craniofacial research is another one that comes to mind. although I don't think there's been a lot of research in that field. But again, we don't know if there are disparities or issues until we start doing more research.
Yeah,
And
I'm gonna.
NCI is particularly interesting because they do have so much, such a broad portfolio, and yet so little in SGM health research. And that's definitely, we're definitely working with NCI to try and improve that. I would share more, but I don't think I'm allowed to. So
Yes.
hopefully just stay tuned.
I appreciate you. So you have a lot of really, really interested people, and that was sort of a loaded question. I'm making that comment because there was some information that was shared, over a year ago. I remember, and maybe it was a regional workshop with regards to NCI specifically. So I'm just saying to everyone that's on this Zoom that in terms of, there's some pay lines and there's some money available. And maybe Nelson has a question about that because Nelson is a cancer researcher.
I didn't have a question per se, but more as a comment just to facilitate networking. I would include in the chat box for anyone that is interested in developing their research, or anybody that's actually received NIH funding or an NIH grant. Can you include your name and what kind of grant you received, either currently or in the past? I think that's a great way just for us to build our network, particularly for people that are early researchers or interested in becoming researchers and want to identify potential collaborators. It doesn't even have to be SGM research per se. Anyone that's received a grant, it's a huge accomplishment. If you receive PCORI grants, NIH grants, grants for through internal funding from your institution, it's a unique skill set, writing and being awarded a grant. So Shine, if you don't mind including the grant that we were awarded and are working on. You have so many that you have successfully received funding for. If you could please share those in the chat box. And if Gwen Quinn is in the room, I encourage her to share as well. Anybody that's received grant funding in the past, please include your name and what you've done in the chat box to help build that network. And anyone that's interested in identifying collaborators, include that information in the chat box as well, so we can help build that network.
One of the things that I wanted you to sort of maybe speak to very briefly, Christopher, because it's been mentioned a couple times during your talk as well as maybe in the comments, is the difference between when we look at administrative supplements. So what are administrative supplements and how can we think about them in terms of SOGI research or SGM
Sure.
research?
So the administrative supplements are intended to provide additional funding to projects that have already received an award. So you have to have an existing award to apply for administrative supplement. But what it does is it allows you to expand your existing research project to include SGM populations, to ask SGM relevant research questions, or to otherwise use existing data to ask SOGI questions and advance SGM health. So basically, it's an add-on to an existing grant. We do these every year, and the max is $100,000, and apparently it can go fairly far if you use it correctly. We're compiling some of the things that our former awardees have done. So hopefully we'll be able to share that with you in the near future. But I hope that answered your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you. I just wanted to give folks an idea that our early career investigators, especially postdocs like myself, where you're working with a PI that may already have an R01 or other larger grant that you can add on an administrative supplement and then basically kind of get written into that so that you are working on an SGM specific topic or something that you're very passionate about. And you do a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of writing of the administrative supplement, but it's your PI that kind of like holds it, that piggybacks on top of an existing research study.
Right. And I just want to point out, it doesn't have to be an R. I think you can also do Ks and Fs. If you visit our administrative supplement site on the SGMR webpage, you can go to the actual parent announcement, and I think you're eligible to apply as long as you have not all awards, but if you have an existing award, generally speaking, you're allowed to apply for these supplements.
Thank you. We're seeing some comments coming in terms of what has been funded, the NCI R25, in terms of Shine and Nelson. And then Ed mentioned that I think there was another grant in here. Oh no, it was Jennifer, the internal funding at JAU. Can you comment also kind of like along the lines of the administrative supplements, there's also diversity supplements. And what's your perspective on the diversity supplements, especially for folks on this Zoom may be interested?
I love the diversity supplements. The problem I have with them is that they don't explicitly say that SGM folks are eligible populations. So for everybody on this call, SGM folks are eligible populations. You can apply for them. SGMs are underrepresented in research, in many fields of research. So if you want to apply to a diversity supplement, I totally encourage you to do so. We've been working to get that language put in for some time now. I believe that they're doing an update of their notice, or however they announced it. So we're trying to get some language in there as well. But
that is like really, so Jennifer and I are freaking out because actually the language that's on the website, so for folks that that know, it's kind of like an administrative supplement. You can add a diversity supplement onto an existing grant, hence the supplement moniker, but it's always and traditionally been sort of based on race, ethnicity, and possibly socioeconomic status, et cetera. I have never heard that you can the SGM identity was considered part of the diversity supplement or making you eligible.
Okay, now here, let me read this to you because this blows my mind.
Thank you.
In spite of tremendous advancements in scientific research, information, educational, and research opportunities that are not equally available to all, NIH encourages institutions to diversify their student, postdoctorate, and faculty populations to enhance the participation of individuals from groups that are underrepresented, including us, in the biomedical, clinical, behavioral, and social sciences, such as, see, those two words mean that everything that follows is an example. It's not exhaustive. And they really need to make that clear. And we've tried to make it clearer to them. They need to make it clear. But yes, please apply for more diversity supplements. Oh, I'm so glad that this is good news to y'all.
This is really good news because I've had this discussion with other early career investigators and maybe mid-career investigators that have actually PIs aren't aware of this in terms of counseling their mentees that they can apply for this because they're like, oh no, I don't think you qualify. I've actually had that conversation with folks. So this is really, really, really good news for everyone. And in terms of even thinking about, as I understand it, the diversity supplements to your organization. So what are the statistics for even your organization? What are the statistics within the institute that you're applying to for underrepresentation around an SGM identity? So that's like kind of amazing news. So thank you. This is like the purpose of this conference and creating new opportunities for us.
Yes, there's also, I blank on the article, but there was an article that came out explicitly including SGMs as underrepresented. I don't remember if it was in JAMA or it was a CDC article. I'll try and find that and put that in my slides. So you'll have it when I share it. But yeah, we encourage everybody to apply for them.
So Christopher, Sean was asking, and I'm curious now too, when you were reading that language, the such as language, where is that on the diversity supplement page or where did you find that? Can you paste that in?
I will pop that in the chat.
That's amazing. I could cry right now.
It's on their homepage. Isn't it funny how two little words can make your day?
Wow, that's kind of, that really makes my day. And I'm hoping that it makes other people's day that's been trying to get funding for doing the research that we're all very passionate about, but feeling like we don't qualify because we thought it was a prerequisite.
Yeah, please share that broadly with your networks as well, because we've been trying to spread this message for a while and it hasn't made the rounds to everybody yet.
So Jennifer raises a really, really great point. And this is a discussion that I had at a roundtable recently in nursing research. Do the reviewers, when we look at reviewer sections, research sections, do the reviewers know that SGM are counted? And are the research sections diverse in terms of representing SGM people? And does the SGMRO know any of the sort of have visibility into that?
Huge impact questions. So SGMRO does not sit on study sections, and we typically only take part in ad hoc reviews. So we don't really get a great sense of what the study section and reviewer community looks like for these types of grants. I know that there is an effort underway to review the diversity of the panels. I'm not entirely sure if SGMs have been considered in that effort. I'm hoping so. And I know that our director sits on a number of relevant groups, so we can find out. But I currently don't have any information on that.
Thank you. That would be something I know, like in the kind of nursing research roundtable that I was participating in, that this was something that was like, our guess is that SGM people are not represented, in the review sections adequately. And when we are looking at things like the diversity supplements, are they even aware? Because we weren't aware, and it's not well publicized. And the such as conversation needs to be kind of populated amongst the various institutes to make sure that folks are aware of that, so they're not just eliminating people before they're even considered.
And as a follow-up to that, we don't collect sexual orientation and gender identity in administrative data, so we would be hard pressed to actually tell you if SGM are represented in study sections. Don't know, because we don't collect it. But in response to your question, Ed, with the new NASEM report on recommended measures and guiding principles, once that gets published, we're hoping to use that to make our case to the broader organizations like OPM and OMB, who are really the ones that control what information is collected on the forums. We've been working on this for years. We saw the window, so we're going to take it. And hopefully we'll have some good news for you immediately after the report is published.
That's great. We have about 5 more minutes left in this session. I know that, it'll be great to have you come back, Christopher. Every year, it's been really wonderful to have the support of Karen Parker in the early days, quite frankly, and speaking to our conference. So it would be great to have you come back and give us another update next year on some of the progress of these initiatives. But some of the information that you presented today has really rocked my world. Are there any kind of final comments or questions for Christopher while we have this wonderful resource and advocate for us in the NIH?
Don't be shy.
Don't be shy.
I'm here for y'all.
Christopher, I did post, I took the liberty of posting your email address. It is publicly available. I did disclaim that on the list, the chat here. So if folks have additional follow-up questions, I'm sure Christopher, as I think of you all as really wonderful connectors, to use Gladwell's terminology, and matchmakers, maybe like you are the SGM Yentes in the NIH, and helping us to connect to the right people. And we appreciate your advocacy and your wonderful work. And it's really wonderful to see the SGMRO growing as an office, yourself included, and the other folks that have been added to kind of spread the good word.
It's been such a, as we were expanding our message and our mission, we were sitting on more and more committees. We were getting more and more burnt out. Like, you can't stretch yourself so thin, but you want to be involved in everything, but you can't unless you have the power behind you to do it. And adding those folks has been immensely helpful. So we've been able to spread the good word a lot further with the help of those people. And again, like, one of my big deals at the SGMRO is talking to potential investigators or people who are interested in research. That's one of my favorite parts of the job. And like doing presentations like this, engaging with people on the ground, seeing what you need, what you're interested in, like what are emerging issues. That's how we stay relevant and make sure that we advance SGM health in the best way possible.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I'm gonna restate Shine's comment because I think it's a good comment. Can we support Christopher to advocate for SOGI data collection ERA Commons? He can't decide to do it himself because he's a Fed, but he can respond to requests and demands from the field. Can we do this? So it's, this group of people is thinking about how we can support you as well. I was thinking about this discussion that we had that's rocked my world around diversity supplements and identity. And maybe one of the talks that you need to give in the future, Christopher, is when an investigator is putting together an NIH biosketch, and we are trying to represent that we are of SGM identity, how do you do that in an artful way in a biosketch? So it's sort of the, how do you prove you gay, or how do you prove that you are, you have this identity, which is like a little bit different than checking a box, I feel, race, ethnicity. And then how do you, demonstrate that in an appropriate and effective manner to sort of get people to pay attention?
That is such an important question, because as we all know, we don't collect SOGI information for researchers. So one of the creative ways we've thought of getting around that is including it in your biosketch. And one of the issues that's come more to the front is all these discussions about pronouns, like how do you know whether you're using the correct pronouns in review sessions, and how do reviewers know that they're actually being culturally competent? We have a whole training on that that's about to be finalized, and hopefully I can share it with you. But yeah, that's absolutely a critical thing. I've talked to my director about that, and I think there is a way to do it, but I think we're trying to figure out the best way to do it, because there are a lot of considerations, right? So we're putting our heads together to try and figure out the best way in the absence of just actually collecting this as standard data.
Absolutely.
And of course, I'll come back to and share anything we come up with y'all.
Karen has been really great about like talking about these kind of gray areas in the past and how to support SGM researchers. We're at time. I really, really appreciate, again, and I speak on behalf of everyone in the Zoom, that it's so wonderful to always have NIH coming back to give us the good update, and we will welcome you back next year with even more. And I'm sure folks will be following with you one-on-one to kind of continue this conversation to help best support you in your ability to advocate for us. So thank you, Christopher, for everything.
And thank you all so much. I really appreciate your time, and it's great to talk to you, and hopefully talk to you all soon.
Thank you. Say hi to Karen for us.
Absolutely.
So, and Chime and everyone else. So what we want to mention now is that we're at 12:30 Eastern time. It's there. We have a 15-minute break before the concurrent poster Q&A. I encourage you all to go to the poster Q&A, the poster virtual hall to take a look at the posters that are being presented. It's in your program within the Q&A sessions. So just to be clear, if you want to attend the group A set of posters and ask those presenters questions, you will stay here in this virtual room. And if you want to go to the room B, I'm pasting the link that's the updated link from the new program to go to room B. But we all have a 15-minute break so that we can, for those of us at this around lunchtime, get a bite to eat, take a bio break, clear your head, absorb what you've just heard, because it's kind of big. I'm like so excited. Jennifer's like, I just can't even, that's a lot. That's like really big news. And I'm going to spread the gay news amongst my network in terms of this diversity supplement idea. So we will see you at 12:45 Eastern time. And take a look at the program as to where you would like to go. Would it be